Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about what's happening in the economy in Russia, and specifically to talk about the fact that Russia has once again increased the size of its armed forces. On Monday the 16th of September 2024, President Putin signed a decree increasing the amount of active servicemen in the army by 180,000 people. And this is actually the third time in the last 2 years that he signed a decree like this. In August 2022, he signed a decree increasing the amount of active servicemen by 137,000. And interestingly, 2 months after that, Russia decided that it had to launch a mobilization, which is basically telling people that they need to join the army. And people in Russia were actually conscripted, and 300,000 people were told that they needed to join up and go and fight in Ukraine. And as I've talked about in previous videos, one of the massive negative knock-on implications of that was that there was a mass exodus of people from Russia. Nobody wanted to hang around and run the risk of being told that they had to be given a gun and go and fight in Ukraine and potentially risk their life. So lots of people decided to leave the country, and that's had a hugely negative impact on the economy. And in December 2023, President Putin signed another decree increasing the size of the armed forces by 170,000 men. So over the course of the last 2 years, the Russian armed forces have been increased in size from around 1.1 million to the new level of 1.5 million. And that represents an increase of around 45%. Now, obviously, there are some serious economic implications of this. Firstly, you have to pay all of those people. And over the last 12 to 18 months, Russia has had to increase the amount that it's paying to its soldiers to encourage more people to sign up. And there are reports that people who are signing up today are being given sign-on bonuses of up to $20,000 to go and fight in Ukraine. So there's the economic impact of actually having to pay for all of the people and also obviously the equipment that those people are going to be using in Ukraine. But the bigger impact on the Russian economy has been the loss of workforce. Because if you take out hundreds of thousands of people and tell them to go and fight in Ukraine, obviously they're no longer able to do their jobs. And so you've got lots of vacancies that are appearing all across Russia. And this is causing a major crisis because there simply aren't enough people to fill all of the jobs. And historically, Russia was able to call upon people from all of the surrounding countries. It was an attractive place to go and work because you could earn big bucks and send it back to your family at home. But that's really died off as a result of what's happening in Ukraine because people are concerned about going to Russia and then being conscripted, actually told that they too have got to go and join the fight in Ukraine. So Russia is losing people because it's taking the workforce and sending it to Ukraine. And it's also become a lot less attractive for people to actually move to. So in today's video, we'll take a look at the latest announcement that's been issued by Russia, talking about this increase in the armed forces and the implications of that, what the immediate impact is likely to be. We'll then have a look at how Russia's armed forces compares to the rest of the world, and we'll have a look at both the numbers and also the financial implications, what Russia is now spending on defence to keep this war in Ukraine going. And then finally today I'll wrap up with my summary as to what I think the impact of this announcement will be, not just financially, but also in terms of the morale within Russia and what it's likely to mean in terms of the people who are thinking about maybe leaving Russia. But before we get started on all of that, I'd like to say once again, thank you so much to everyone that's supporting the channel. Really, really mean this. If you're a long-term supporter, either through Patreon, where you can get early access to my videos and watch them advert-free, or YouTube membership, where you'll also get early access, or buy me a coffee membership, thank you for that long-term support. I've got people who've been supporting me for a month, 6 months, 12 months, and more than 2 years. And that really blows me away that people like the channel so much that they're prepared to provide me with that support. So thank you so much to every single one of you that signed up. And if you've bought me a coffee or sent me a YouTube super thanks recently, thank you so much for the time and the effort and the generosity involved in that. Really does mean a lot to me. On Monday the 16th of September, President Putin issued decree number 792, which looks like this, but unfortunately I can't translate it into English, so unless you read Russian, it probably doesn't mean a lot to you. And the decree, which takes effect from the 1st of December 2024, increases the number of active personnel in the armed forces by 180,000. That takes the figure to just over 1.5 million. And the total number of personnel in the Russian armed forces is now 2.38 million. And as I said at the start of today's video, this is the third time in the last 2 years that President Putin has issued such a decree. The first of those added 137,000 people back in August 2022, and the second, which was in December 23, added a further 170,000. So there's been an increase over the past 2 years of almost 500,000 people to the armed forces. And this isn't just a situation whereby Russia is looking to increase the number of people that are being recruited. This isn't just a career option for these people. All of those people that have been recruited in the past 2 years have been sent to fight in an active war in Ukraine. And I think that's a very different concept to most countries in the world. When we're talking about people being called up or joining the armed forces, it's generally seen as some sort of career progression. You go, you learn some skills, you get to see some of the world. And in many countries, it's a good long-term career option. However, in Russia right now, there is a huge danger sign about joining the armed forces because Russia is losing thousands of people on a daily basis, either injured or killed in the fight in Ukraine. So being called up right now into the Russian army is a high-risk venture. And it isn't something that I think a lot of people who are sitting in Russia today are really looking to get into. And that's one of the reasons why back in October 2022, less than 2 months after the first of these announcements, Russia had to issue a mobilization. It forced 300,000 people to sign up. Now, some of those people would have been encouraged by the cash that was on offer, but other people were hit with conscription papers. There were lots of stories on social media of people who had normal jobs, who were going about their normal everyday life, who suddenly got hit with a paper being told, you've got 7 days to report to an office and get yourself over to Ukraine. And a lot of those people aren't being given good training. So they're not going through 6 months of military training so that when they get to Ukraine, they know what to do. These people are being fast-tracked, they're being sent out, given a gun and told to get on with it. And that's obviously not a great situation to be in. And as a direct result of the first announcement and the mobilization, around 700,000 people decided that they didn't want to run that risk. They were going to leave Russia. And those 700,000 people were on top of the 500,000 people that left immediately following the invasion of Ukraine back in February 2022. So in 2022, Russia lost around 1.2 million people from its workforce. And as we've discussed previously, those people tended to be the more valuable people in the workforce. They were senior management, they were people who were better educated, people who didn't agree with the politics of what was going on in Ukraine and decided that they would like to live the rest of their life outside of the country. And the latest announcement of another 180,000 people being called up is actually greater than the announcement made in August 2022 that led to that mobilization. And there is a big question here as to whether or not there are another 180,000 people in Russia who voluntarily want to sign up and go and join that fight. And I don't think that Russia will have a lot of people banging down the door, desperate to get over there. And so there is a real risk that they're going to have to call another mobilization. And if that happens, then we're going to see a higher level of conscription, because I think people who were interested in joining the fight would have signed up 2 years ago. Over the past 2 years, the war has dragged on, and Russians are now aware that this is no longer just a special military operation, which was how it was portrayed initially in Russia, because Ukraine has been fighting back with drones. They've been hitting oil refineries, military bases, and in some instances, they've actually hit some civilian buildings. And so news of that is spreading. And also Ukraine invaded the Kursk region and has taken over around 500 square miles. So Russians are now becoming aware that this is a very real war. And the longer it goes on, the more people die and the more families will be affected, and news of that spreads in communities. So I think right now, it's unlikely that a lot of people will be keen to get involved and pick up a gun and go and fight. And so if Russia does announce another mobilization, that could have a hugely negative impact on a workforce that is already severely depleted. I've talked about this in previous videos, but Russia is lacking potentially up to around 5 million people in its workforce. And that's as a result of some being sent to Ukraine, some people leaving voluntarily, some people dying, and then the fact that there is no longer a lot of migrants coming into Russia to fill all the vacancies. So Russia is in a really precarious situation right now. And the fact that it's calling up another 180,000 people, there's the cost of paying those people, the cost of equipping them with all of their guns and military equipment, and then the biggest impact of all on the Russian economy is going to be the loss of those people and also the knock-on impact of losing even more people who decide they don't want to hang around and they're going to get their skates on and leave Russia. In view of the latest announcements, I thought it'd be interesting to compare the largest armies in the world as of 2024. And as you can see, China, not unexpectedly, has the largest army at just over 2 million, and that's out of a population of 1.4 billion. So in percentage terms, that only represents around 0.14% of the population. The second largest army in the world is India, which has the largest population in the world at just over 1.4 billion. And India has just under 1.5 active military personnel, which represents around 0.1% of the Indian population. Now, prior to the latest announcement, the United States did have the third largest army in the world in terms of active military personnel, with just over 1.3 million. Which represents around 0.9% of the population in the US. Russia previously had the fourth largest active military personnel in the world at 1.32 million. However, following this latest announcement of an additional 180,000 men, that will take Russia to 1.5 million and will rank it as third in the world. And with 1.5 million active personnel, that means that Russia now have more than 1% of their total population in the armed forces. North Korea has the fifth largest active military personnel in the world at 1.32 million. And with a population of only 26 million, that means that more than 5% of the population are currently serving in the armed forces. Ukraine currently has the sixth largest active personnel at 900,000, which represents around 2.4% of the current population of 38 million. Pakistan is ranked at number 7 on this list with 654,000 active personnel, Iran number 8 with 610,000, and South Korea and Vietnam are 9 and 10, who both have 600,000 people. Now, the days of wars being fought on a battlefield between two groups of men armed with guns are long gone. There is a lot of equipment and investment that's needed by countries in terms of their defence spending. So the amount that countries are spending is not proportionate to the amount of people that they're employing. And this chart shows the countries with the 10 largest defence budgets in 2024. And as you can see, right at the top of this list is the United States, with a budget of more than $831 billion. So although the USA is currently ranked as the third largest country in terms of active personnel, it's by far the largest spender in terms of total defence spending. And the amount that the USA is investing into its defence budget in 2024 is more than 3.5 times more than the next highest spender, China, whose total budget is $227 billion. And the USA's budget is more than 7.5 times that of Russia, which is ranked at number 3 on this chart, who are investing $109 billion in 2024. India, which ranked at number 2 on the number of active military personnel, comes in at number 4 with a budget of $74 billion, followed by Saudi Arabia with a budget of $72 billion, the United Kingdom, which didn't appear in the top 10 in terms of number of personnel, but is number 6 on this list with a budget of just under $63 billion. Germany come in at number 7 with a budget of $56 billion. Japan, number 8 with $53 billion. Australia, number 9 with $52.5 billion. And France come in at number 10 with a budget of just under $50 billion. And I think what's interesting about that list is that it tells you where the real firepower is in the world. It's one thing having a lot of people, a lot of men that you can deploy on the ground. But realistically, these days, the firepower is going to come via missiles and other forms of military equipment. And so having the biggest army doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to win the war. So what's the summary and conclusion today? Well, I wanted to post this video because I think the news that Russia is recruiting another 180,000 people into the armed forces is really quite interesting, because the previous two announcements that President Putin made relating to the increase in the armed forces had a hugely negative impact on the workforce in Russia. Lots of people decided that that was enough. They didn't want to run any further risk of being called up and sent to fight in Ukraine, and so they got their skates on and they left the country. More than 1 million people have fled Russia since this war started. And the fact that Russia is continuing with the war and continuing to recruit is going to make the situation worse, because all of the low-hanging fruit has gone. All the people who were considering going to fight, who quite fancied it, who thought, yes, that seems like a good option for me, will have signed up already. So there are very few people in Russia who are sitting itching to go and be sent to Ukraine. I am sure that the vast majority of people in the workforce have no interest whatsoever of being given a uniform and being sent to Ukraine. So this latest announcement could cause yet another wave of emigration from Russia. People who've been considering leaving, thinking, if there's another one of these announcements that's made, I am definitely going to leave. If I was in that situation, I would definitely be packing my bags and heading for the border. And of course, from a workforce point of view, Russia is already in a dire situation. I've talked about it in many videos recently. But Russia is simply short of people. It doesn't have enough bums on seats to be able to fill all of the jobs. And what's happening right now, because of the war economy that's been introduced over the course of the last 12 to 18 months, there are certain companies in Russia that are doing really well. They're being sponsored by the Kremlin to make things for the war in Ukraine. They're getting guaranteed payments directly from the state for all of that equipment. And so those companies have been offering really high wages to attract in more staff, because if they can fill all of the jobs, if they can complete all of the orders, then they get those guaranteed payments. So they've been creating a big spiral in terms of wages. They've been pushing up all of the wage offers in the market. The people who have left the companies to go and join there have left behind vacancies. And the companies that have vacancies are now having to compete in this larger market. So as the wages go up, all companies have to offer better deals. They need to attract in the best staff. And so we've got this wage spiral. It's causing everybody to have more money because they're being paid more. They're now spending more. That's driving up inflation, which is driving up interest rates. And all of this is seriously bad news for the Russian economy. And the Russian central bank recently increased interest rates to 19% to try to stop the prices going up anymore. But unfortunately, that isn't going to fix it, because the reason why wages are going up and why prices are going up is because the Kremlin is sponsoring all of these businesses, and it's also offering big deals for people to go and fight in Ukraine. And the fact that it's recruiting another 180,000 people is likely to add fuel to the fire. The people who join up are going to want good deals. Nobody's going to want to sign up on the deals that were being offered 2 years ago. You want the market rate. And the market rate at the moment for going to Ukraine is big money. They're having to pay bonuses. People who sign on are getting paid a lump sum, reportedly up to $20,000, which is really big money in Russia. And they're also being paid healthy salaries. So that's the only way they're going to recruit 180,000 people. That's going to take more people out of the workforce, leave more vacancies. Those companies with vacancies are obviously going to have to offer higher wages to get people in. And so it goes on. We've got a real spiral here. So the fact that Russia is having to drag more of its workforce over to Ukraine to keep the war going is seriously bad news for the Russian economy. Those companies are going to lose people, so they're going to become less productive. If you haven't got enough people to fill all of the jobs, then clearly you can't meet all of your obligations. So that'll be a negative impact on those companies. They could find themselves either losing contracts or not being able to fulfill them, and therefore being paid less. getting less profit. On the other side of things, on the costs, they're going to have to offer higher wages to attract in replacement staff. That's going to reduce their profits. So all of this is seriously bad news if you're a company in Russia. And when you take a step back and look at the impact on the overall Russian economy, they're going to be spending more on people, spending more on equipment for those people to go and fight in Ukraine. They're going to lose people from the workforce, so the companies will be less productive. Wages are likely to be forced up as a result of that workforce shortage. That's going to drive up inflation. That's going to drive up interest rates. And all of this is becoming a nightmare from Russia's point of view. I'm sure Elvira Nabiullina, the head of the Russian central bank, will have her head in her hands when she sees this announcement, because she knows it's going to apply further pressure to the economy at a time when Russia really needs to get its house in order. So the overall summary of today's video is that this latest announcement is bad news, firstly for the people in Russia who are going to be called up and sent to fight in Ukraine, but secondly for the economy, because there are multiple negative implications, and the longer that this war goes on, the worse it's going to get for the Russian economy. So hopefully you've enjoyed today's video, you found it useful, informative and thought-provoking. If you've liked what I've said, then please give me a thumbs up. Thank you for watching this video all the way through to the end, and here's something to put a smile on your face.
Go for a car ride, and then, little boy, do you want to go and get a treat? And then we'll go get a treat, and we'll have dinner, and I'll make you dinner, and I'll make you want to have some salmon? Oh, you want to have salmon? And we go in the car? In the car, we'll go for a ride. Yeah, okay.